10 nations on the brink. A future without borders.
Imagine a world map where familiar borders vanish, where nations crumble under the weight of conflict, climate change, and economic crises. In this video, we're uncovering the shocking truth about 10 countries that might not exist in the future, and the reasons why their survival is at stake. Throughout history, empires have risen and fallen, borders have been redrawn, and entire nations have disappeared. But today, in a world shaped by globalization, technology, and climate change, the reasons why countries might vanish have never been more complex. From rising sea levels to internal strife, we're exploring the fates of 10 nations that could face extinction, and why this matters to all of us. The idea of a country ceasing to exist might sound far-fetched, but history tells a different story. Nations like the Soviet Union, Yugoslavia, and East Germany were once political realities. Now they're just chapters in history books. Today, a combination of geopolitical tensions, environmental disasters, and economic instability has put some modern countries on a similar path. Could the world map look drastically different in the coming decades? Tuvalu. This tiny island nation in the Pacific Ocean faces an existential threat from rising sea levels. With most of its land sitting just a few meters above sea level, Tuvalu has already seen parts of its coastline swallowed by the ocean. Efforts to combat climate change have been slow, leaving Tuvalu's 11,000 residents contemplating a future as climate refugees. Countries like New Zealand have even begun programs to welcome displaced Tuvaluans, but the question remains, what happens to a nation when its land is gone? The Maldives. Often called a tropical paradise, the Maldives faces the same fate as Tuvalu. With over 80% of its islands less than a meter above sea level, the country is on the front line of the climate crisis. The government has explored solutions like building floating cities and artificial islands, but the cost and feasibility of such projects remain daunting. Could the Maldives become the Atlantis of the 21st century? Lebanon. Once known as the Paris of the Middle East, Lebanon has been plagued by economic collapse, political corruption, and social unrest. The devastating 2020 Beirut explosion highlighted the extent of governmental dysfunction, and many young citizens are fleeing the country in search of better opportunities. As brain drain accelerates and public services deteriorate, Lebanon's survival as a stable nation is increasingly uncertain. Kiribati, another Pacific nation under siege by rising sea levels. Kiribati has already purchased land in Fiji as a potential relocation site for its citizens. While the government has taken proactive steps, the emotional and cultural loss of abandoning ancestral lands looms large. Can Kiribati preserve its identity while relocating its people? Somalia. Decades of civil war, terrorism, and famine have left Somalia in a fragile state. Despite international aid and intervention, the country struggles to establish a stable government. The ongoing presence of militant groups like Al-Shabaab only adds to the instability, making Somalia one of the most vulnerable nations in the world. Haiti. Haiti's history of natural disasters, political corruption, and economic hardship has left it in a precarious position. The 2010 earthquake was a devastating blow, and the country has yet to fully recover. With its infrastructure crumbling and social unrest growing, Haiti's future hangs in the balance. South Sudan. As the world's youngest country, South Sudan has faced immense challenges since gaining independence in 2011. Ethnic conflict, political instability, and humanitarian crises have plagued the nation, leading to widespread displacement and suffering. While peace agreements have been attempted, the road to stability remains uncertain. Syria. After more than a decade of civil war, Syria's infrastructure, economy, and population have been decimated. Millions of Syrians live as refugees, and entire cities lie in ruins. Even as the conflict subsides in some areas, the task of rebuilding seems insurmountable, leaving questions about Syria's long-term viability.
North Korea. While North Korea's government maintains tight control, cracks in its stability are becoming apparent. Economic sanctions, food shortages, and internal dissent pose significant challenges. Should the regime collapse, the question arises, what happens to the Korean peninsula? Would North Korea merge with South Korea, or would it face a prolonged period of chaos? Venezuela. Once one of Latin America's wealthiest nations, Venezuela has been brought to its knees by hyperinflation, political corruption, and economic mismanagement. Millions have fled the country, creating one of the largest refugee crises in the world. With its economy in shambles and its government losing legitimacy, Venezuela's future as a unified nation is uncertain. While these nations face unique challenges, they also share common threads. Climate change acts as a multiplier, exacerbating existing vulnerabilities. Geopolitical conflicts often stem from resource scarcity or historical grievances, further destabilizing regions. Even the global economy plays a role, as financial instability can tip fragile nations into chaos. In some cases, international cooperation offers a glimmer of hope. Initiatives like the Paris Agreement aim to address climate change, while organizations like the United Nations work to mediate conflicts and provide aid. However, the effectiveness of these efforts often depends on the political will of major powers. The realization that these countries might not exist in the future forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about our world. The fate of these nations is not just a local issue, it's a global one. Whether it's rising sea levels, political instability, or economic collapse, these crises have ripple effects that impact everyone. The question is, what can we do to change this trajectory? The potential disappearance of these 10 countries serves as a stark reminder of the interconnected challenges we face. From climate change to geopolitical strife, the factors threatening these nations are complex and multifaceted. While their futures remain uncertain, their stories highlight the urgent need for global cooperation and action. Want to learn more about the forces shaping our world? Subscribe now and join us as we uncover the stories that matter. Together, we can make a difference.